service projects, the reason that we do what we do and why we do them. And we have a wonderful presenter, but before we get to him, we're going to have some words of welcome from our DGE. DGE, Debbie, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, District Learning Facilitator Sonia. Good evening, fellow Rotarians. This is actually our last virtual PET session for the full team, and I want to take the opportunity to say a heartfelt thank you to our learning facilitator for doing a wonderful job with all the sessions, and to every single member who has supported Maria in terms of communications, my incoming district secretary Giselle, also at communications, our translators, all the presenters who have gone before PDG Stephen, who is presenting last tonight, and importantly, all the attendees. Some of you, and I do pay attention to the list of attendees, I know that we have quite a few Rotarians on the call who have been present for every single session. And I really want to commend you for keeping up the attendance, because I can't emphasize enough, as Sonia does at every session, how important these sessions are to learning and being able to function properly in your upcoming roles. Having said that, I am very much looking forward to seeing these faces, not virtually, but in person, face to face, at our PETS in St. Vincent on the 17th and 18th. We have wonderful interactive sessions lined up for the PETS. It is not going to be a repeat. I'm saying that again, it is not going to be a repeat. Do not think because you have come to these sessions that there's no need to be there. There's every need to be in St. Vincent. Please, if you haven't, register and attend. Lastly, before I hand back to Sonia, service projects, I think we all know, is at the heart of what we do. And I know that PDG Stephen has an excellent presentation tonight, so that I want you all to really engage yourselves and, take away every opportunity, use every opportunity to ask questions and to learn from this session. Thank you very much. And Sonia, over back to you.
Thanks very much, DGE. I'm noticing in the chat that they're saying our French translation is not coming through well.
No, everything is okay because we just checked. They could let us know, but we just checked. Everything is okay.
Okay. All right. Well, on that note, I would like to welcome all of you, past district governors. I see them in the meeting. Fellow Rotarians, this is the evening that we've all been waiting for. Service projects, as DGE said, is at the heart of what we do, but you always have to plan. You can't do a service project unless you've gone through all the steps. And the person that we have tonight who will lead us in this session is our past district governor, Stephen. PDG Stephen Ramroop was governor when I was president. That seems like a long time ago. PDG Stephen, 2012, 2013. But we know that he's been on the ground and he's ready to take up this task tonight. So I'm handing it over to you, sir. Welcome to our PETS this evening.
Thank you very much. Okay, let me just make sure we get. Right, thank you very much. Just share the screen. Right. Right. Can you guys see this one? Everyone? Yeah? Great. Good evening, everyone, from very, very hot Trinidad South. I just finished played with my granddaughter, so I was a bit late joining Maria. I do sorry, I nearly gave you a heart attack there, but Yes, I just gave my wife to put her to sleep, but she woke up and she's dancing around. So welcome. And today we're just going to present, at least engage the Rotarians who are the presidents-elect, secretaries-elect. And I will have to ask that the assistant governors and the governors who are on the chat, I'm sorry, who are in the meeting this evening, that you can actually go into the respective groups when we do the breakout and keep an eye on the group members, because we would like you to sort of facilitate in those, because the whole aim of the service projects presentation today is not so much in terms of what you can get online and what you can get on the learning center, but it's about how we individually as clubs throughout the district, and we have a very diverse district, I am sure you can appreciate, and we do things differently, but usually the same, and we have the same outcomes, but sometimes we don't appreciate how much those outcomes impact our communities. So today, we're going to have the presentation with a bit of difference. And what I will do, I'll go to the second slide. So in order to engage and to see how much you guys could understand a bit about what are the rules, what we're going to do today is we're going to have a little quiz, a little question, and we would like you to, we'll have 6 minutes. Of course, as I said, governors don't have to engage, to do it if you don't want to, but and assistant governors. But if you would like to, feel free. You have 6 minutes starting now, Maria, to answer these true and false questions and send it up. And then when we assess it, then we will continue the discussion, right? So start now. 6 minutes. What it is, very nice. We have 113 participants and we have about 89 so far have engaged, which is good. DG, that's very nice. Yeah. Which is one of the
That is fun.
one of the key indicators, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I like the engagement. I see we have 83% participation on the
Yeah.
poll.
Correct. And it's a good way of seeing how we get involved on this environment, because sometimes you don't see persons and you tend to get worried. So at the University of Trinidad and Tobago, where I'm a facilitator, then some of these online courses, they tend to do this in the beginning so that we can actually, of course they can drop off in the end, but we have a nice little workshop for them in 3 little groups. The French will be group 1. So all the French participants will go to group 1. And the English speaking participants on the chat will go to 2 groups, from your surname from A to M, that is alpha to mama. If you end, your surname starts in A and N and to M, you go to group 2, and all surnames starting from N to Z will go to group 3. So for example, our DGE will go to group 3, right? Chapman, Irwin, you will go to group 2, yes? And my French participants will all be in group 1. Everybody understands that? Sonia will be in group 2. Right. All right. So Maria, I think we finished. Yeah. Okay. So guys, so let's get to the slide. All right. Just go up there now. Right. And so we have, it's not about the answers, it's about the discussion. I am very happy that 90% of the participants engaged, DG, and I think that I would now have a little chat with our team members. So, presidents-elect, secretaries-elect, you are going to have a wonderful year. And one of the things that you're going to have to be doing is having projects. You will delegate responsibility to your team, and you will probably appoint one or an alternate, or at least most people with bigger clubs would have assistant, but you'd appoint a person right, in your club service section or your international service, who will deal with service projects. And therefore, although the secretary is going to be involved in it because he or she will be doing a lot of work. Am I speaking too fast for the translation? Maria, it's okay? It's coming on okay, right? Yes?
Yeah, I haven't seen anything, but
It's fine.
I'll
Yeah.
double check.
Yeah. So you can just
Okay.
check with any one of the French persons to see if the translation, if I speak too fast, I'm not sure if the system will pick it up. Okay,
Okay,
but
no
I'll try to go a bit slower. So
problem.
the service project chair, who will obviously have a very big responsibility because a number of projects that we do in our clubs all over the world involves raising funds. It involves meeting people. It involves having people in the club and having people in other environments where club members and members of the public are all there. So when you appoint the service club's chair, you will find that you will have some protocols that you'll have to go through, some terms of reference. Some clubs, for example, have strategic plans. And when you have a strategic plan, it tells the club members, especially when you invite new members or guests, that your club has a vision, it has a mission. I mean, we are so accustomed with that from our business world or from our corporate world, workshops. Sometimes we don't understand how important that is because a lot of our clubs are in environments that are different. Some are close to the shore, some are in very close to the forest, some are in the suburban parts of cities, some are in the cities, and the population that you serve vary. Their needs vary. So when you ask the service club's chair and his or her team to either continue existing projects or develop new projects, you have to have a sort of terms of reference, right? And therefore, the role of the service clubs, the service projects chair, and remember, presidents, you are ex officio to that in all the teams that you set up. And I'm using the word teams because I like teams instead of committees. See? So proposing any project that comes to mind is not something that you would want to tell your service projects chair, because any project is not valid or it wouldn't be good for particular clubs. The projects that you choose have to be in line with your strategic plan. It has to be in line with what your club's vision for that area is or what your club is all about. Yes? If it's a club that does a lot of hard work with eye projects, you have golf tournaments, you have fishing tournaments, you have beach cleanups, you give people wheelchairs, and a lot of clubs do that. You have projects where you send people to other countries, you have medical equipment that you buy for hospitals. There are many projects, but it's not just any project. The project has to fit into what your club is all about and the population that your club serves. So it would be wrong to say any project. The project has to be sometimes projects that the club has done before and has been successful in, or it could be a project that after the COVID, such as mental health, it just became more and more glaring because although we had much mental health problems before the COVID, after the COVID, we are having more suicides now, and that is data that is by actual significant evidence that is coming out from scientific journals all over the world that we are having more suicides. I mean, today in Trinidad, we had a young girl, I think in Valstein or Val Park, who they found hanging. You see, so we are definitely having more more mental health issues. So those are things that. So the first one would not be. It will be false by saying any project. It has to be specific to what the club's vision is, and what the club's mission is, and the population that the club serves. the country that the club is in, etc. Right? Yes, the service projects chair has to plan, implement, and evaluate projects. That will be one of their key terms of reference. They must lead fundraising projects, or at least mobilize and empower other Rotarians who have passions for other types of fundraising projects. For example, in our club, we have a Rotarian who likes to do golf and run the golf project. We have another Rotarian who likes to do the Parang project, etc. So there are certain members who are champions. So the service projects chair will identify those leading Rotarians and mobilize them and empower them, especially if they are successful in what they are doing. But the service projects chair must be the leader. In other words, then he or she must actually supervise and at least mentor these Rotarians, although they have been doing it, and I will tell you about that later on. Mitigate risks involved. This is very
Stephen,
important.
slow
Yes?
down. Sorry, the
Hold on, right.
translators are asking you to lentement, s'il vous plaît.
Okay. So mitigate risks in your clubs. And that is an extremely important task or rule that the service projects chair must do when they are planning projects. If you have differently abled persons attending your event or function or project, if you have young children, if you have persons who are not accompanied by their parents, if you have washrooms that are in dark areas and not well lit, if you have pavements that have holes and rough pebbles or water, remember that those are very important projects, risks that you have to identify, because it can cost the club and it can cost the members. And not only that, it can cause injury and harm to the persons who are assisting with the project, your own Rotarians and their partners in service, as well as guests and other persons who might be involved in the project. So yes, the risk management is a responsibility of the board members. And if you have a health and safety person on board. Sorry? Yeah? Okay. Keep the project to the club members and partners in service. No, it is not a good thing to keep your project just within the club, because as you can well imagine, there are certain projects that involve certain key stakeholders in the community, whether it be government stakeholders, whether it be the corporate stakeholders or business stakeholders, or in the village and communities. For example, the local pastor, for example, the health services visitor, the CEO of the regional health authority, or the cement factory, etc. So projects cannot be within the club itself in terms of the participants of the project. So you cannot keep the project to the club members. That will be false. And lastly, post your projects on Facebook. Yeah, you can, but it's important to post your projects on Showcase, because what we will ask all Rotarians to do, at least in all of the Rotary clubs this year, we hope that we want to create a database where the district governor-elect has asked me to mention that when you post your projects on Showcase, it means that your projects will be part of an accessible database. And we in the district, we have quite a number of projects that are ongoing that are very beautiful projects. And therefore, we want to encourage Rotarians to post your projects on Showcase. And as well, we're going to allow you through the next few months to ensure that you try to do it. And as well, we will sort of keep we'll build up a database in such a way that we can access that database, right, which will be beneficial to all concerned. So, let's see. Well, we did pretty well with the slides. Of course, later on, we can always tell you how many right and wrong we got. But what I enjoyed most about this is that we had 81% participation. I think that is, to me, the benefit of this, right? Okay, so let me see now. how can I go further? Next slide. Right. Nice. Good. So you see that little fish that just jump across from the small bowl to the big bowl, right? I'm just going to talk a little bit really about impact. I think that it is important for us to use an example, right? And to use the example will be part of what we're going to be doing in the workshop, right? So what we have here is, and this will be the subject of the workshop. A small Rotary Club, about 12 members in a small country, has 25 other Rotary clubs in that country. And in their area, there is a high incidence of diabetes, hypertension, and which leads to stroke and heart disease. Every year, the club gives out 4 wheelchairs for persons with amputated limbs due to diabetes mellitus. Now, a lot of us know about diabetes. We have had some Rotary governors from our district who have been very passionate about projects related to reducing the incidence of diabetes. So today, we are going to divide the participants, as we said, into 3 groups. And basically, we will ask each one of the groups to have a particular role to play in this. You're going to pretend that you are the service projects team for a Rotary Club, this Rotary Club. So you are going to pretend in your little workshop, which would last 15 minutes, that we are going to pretend that we are the service projects team for this Rotary Club. So we are going to identify the project. So we're gonna talk it out a bit, right? Do you know of any tool? Do you know of any tests that could be done in a community that could reduce the incidence of the complications of diabetes? You could actually enter your answer on the chat, right? Or you can wave your hand, anyone. Anyone, is there a test that could be done, like a screening test, that could monitor and evaluate the incidence of complications due to diabetes in a community? And if you monitor that test and you could reduce that value in that community, you can actually reduce the incidence of diabetes complications such as amputated limbs. Anybody at all on this 119 persons, just answer somehow. Just mute your mic. Somebody wave your hand so we could mute you. We could unmute you. Anybody? I'm sure people did projects. Any tool, any test. Nobody? Oh, in the chat?
Stephen, you have some in the chat box.
All right, let me check. Show chat. All right. Shivanan Jagdev says blood sugar, HbA1, and a few people right. So the answer to that is A1C. If you can actually test the HbA1c, and what is the HbA1c? It's really a test in which the blood sugar over the course of months, right, actually tags on, the glucose molecule tags on to the actual hemoglobin molecule, right? And it forms a little coating, which is tested by this test. So in a club that gives out 4 wheelchairs every year in a community, and they have been there for over 30 years, let's say, or 50 years, and every year they've been giving out wheelchairs. My question to you is, do you think, now it's a good thing to give out wheelchairs because you are helping 4 persons, but in this community here, right, there are over 35 amputations per year due to diabetes. So therefore, they need about 35 wheelchairs, but you are giving out 4. And this is just in this community, not in the country itself. So if there is a project that we can develop to reduce the incidence of the diabetic complication of an amputation, the HbA1c is that tool that you can use. Yes? That project using the HbA1c can have more impact than if you were to give out just the 4 wheelchairs every year to persons who need it. That is the difference, and that is what impact is all about. So for over 25 to 30 years, this club has been giving out wheelchairs every year for amputation, but they still continue to have an increase in amputations due to diabetes. So therefore, we must ask ourselves whether just giving out the wheelchairs, that project is good. You have to give out the wheelchair. You must continue to do that. Nobody's saying that you can't, but you need to get a project that has high impact, that can actually reduce that incidence of amputation. But because wouldn't it be great if you could reduce the incidence of complications of diabetes? So this is the project that I would want the groups to actually discuss now. All right, so let's change the slide. Right. So, group 1, French clubs. The project is about using the HbA1c test as a toolkit. We want you to assess the situation. Well, in this scenario, I have already assessed the situation, right? So I have kind of helped you a bit by actually deciding on the project with which you are going to do. So what we would like you to do is discuss how you can assess your area that your club is in. What are the tools that you can use to find out what was happening in that area, in this club, right, that caused me to say that the HbA1c is a high impact project. For example, I'll give you an example of what you need to do. There is a booklet that is published by Rotary International called the Community Assessment Book or Toolkit. That actually is a very good toolkit that clubs can use to assess the needs of their community. So we want group 1 to pick a presenter so that at the end of 15 minutes, he or she can present what they have discussed. We want you to discuss the ways that a club, maybe your Rotary Club, any Rotary Club, or in particular this Rotary Club, what are the things that they can do to assess the community that they serve, and how can they decide on what projects have high impact compared to other projects that the club may be doing. Put yourself in the situation of this club, using the experience of your particular clubs, and we want you to just give us about 3 or 4 or 5 points on how you can assess your community in terms of figuring out what projects can be high impact, such as this one. And group 2, we want you to plan the project and present to the board this project that I'm talking about, a HbA1c project in this type of community. We want you to plan a project like this and present it to the board. We just want you to take 15 minutes, discuss among yourself how you're going to plan this project, and make a presentation to the board, which will be what you'll be presenting to the team here today. You have 15 minutes when you go into your group to do that. Choose a speaker so that person can present on behalf of the group. And group 3, we want you to implement the project and evaluate and report on the project. For example, similar to what this club, this actual scenario is all about. Just go through the steps, tell us what you will do to implement the project and how you can evaluate and report it back to the club, and of course, to showcase. Okay? So, Maria, we can break up into groups now. Everybody, I hope, understands. So, let's start. We have 15 minutes commencing now. Welcome back. So, we're going to go to group 1. The representative from group 1, could you just give us an idea of what you guys discussed? I know the time was a bit short, but anything that you discussed, could you sort of summarize it for us, please? Are they hearing us, right? Yeah.
Bonjour tout le monde,
Yes,
est-ce que vous
ma'am.
m'entendez? Do you hear me?
Yes, we are hearing you.
Sorry for my English. I try
That's
to be
okay.
to speak good English. So I am in French Guiana in Cayenne, and in the room 1 we discuss with Martinica Club, and we understood that we made the same action every year in Cayenne since 2018, every 17th of November, because it's a special day of diabetes. We make an action in the street for the public. We organize in front of a pharmacy with the doctor and nurse glycemic test, sugar test, and everybody in the street can come sit down and test the glycemic. What is very important is that some people didn't know that they have glycemic in the blood. So it was very important. And after we test the people, we give them the results. And after that, they go to the doctor and after start a treatment for the glycemic. And this year, we couple this glycemic test with hypertension heart test. And so it was very, very interesting. In Martinica, they do the same things, but with an association of running. So they organize running a course, I don't know in English, and the people can test the glycemic too. And so it was very, very positive action.
Okay. Group 2.
Hi, good evening to everyone. My name is Jermaine and I'm presenting for Group 2. And Group 2, we had to plan the project and present to the board. And so in our group, we discussed identifying the need and the objective really. We came up with a number of needs and objective, including reducing the number of amputations in the community and seeing how we can conduct more or conduct testing, the HbA1c test within the community. We looked at some of the goals and we said the first thing really that needs to be done is to do a community needs assessment and to be aware of the needs and what support is available in the community. So part of that whole community needs assessment would also include if there is no data, then how can we work with other stakeholders to collect and analyze the data? Also, under the community needs assessment, you would determine whether or not the project is something that Rotary Club can do on its own, or if it needs to involve other stakeholders or additional stakeholders. We would need, under that assessment, we would find out whether or not testing is actually being done, or if there's a need for more testing to be done within the community. Then we have other goals, conducting testing as mentioned, education and awareness for the community. Our group felt that it's one thing to do testing, but people would also need to understand what is diabetes management, treatment, the awareness in the community and so on. And then we spoke about dieting and education on dieting and so on. We also spoke about identifying who the audience is for the project that we are going to do. And yes, I think that's where we would have gotten before we came back into the other group.
Thank you. Thank
Before,
you very
before
much.
time ran out.
That's fine. That's fine. Okay, and group 3.
Hi, good night. I'm Bonita Walren from Rotary Club of Demerara, Guyana. And in our group, to kind of nicely dovetail from group 2, we had an information and awareness campaign to kick us off. We would also work in conjunction with the local health operatives, but bring the vaccination drive into the community so that people who would be unable to get to the community centers would have access to being able to receive the test. And we wouldn't necessarily just work alone as a Rotary organization with other local stakeholder groups. For example, having persons mobilized to do free transportation to the site or the location. So again, you'd remove that barrier for people's participation. And having something like a draw for persons, those who are not necessarily just motivated by their health concerns, but who may want to have either access to giveaways, including sugar testing meters and so on. On the evaluation side of things, we had three key points of evaluation where we would either start with what was our target number of participants coming out of the organization phase and seeing how well we benchmarked against that number. Also, how many new persons have we added to the Ministry of Health's roster? That would be also a good metric to evaluate the success of the project. And we would also create a database so that if when persons retest, we'd have comparative data to see whether or not their condition has been improving or worsening over the passage of time. That was it from group 3.
Thank you. I think I wish we could all give a round of applause to the 3 groups. Sweets and chocolates, Debbie, DG, we'll have to owe them that for the district conference. Definitely. In an active workshop, we would have given the 3 groups a pat on the shoulder. This was very good in terms of the environment of Zoom, in terms of the participation. So the aims and objectives of this presentation were met, in my opinion, because we assessed the sort of participation of the Rotarians in the entire group. We also assessed the engagement of the Rotarians in each of the groups, but more importantly, in terms of the actual presentation on service projects, I think it was important for us to understand that in order to do proper high impact, high value projects where we spend our time, our money, and our efforts in a very efficient and effective manner going forward with so much other problems we have in the world, wars, shortage of food, supply chain, drought issues in the Caribbean, water problems, mental issues, even COVID is still there. And of course, we have the threat of viruses coming. There's so many problems that clubs must, especially in countries when a number of clubs actually compete for the same set of resources and stakeholders. So we must plan our projects a little more carefully. We must assess the risks. And in order to plan your project, first of all, we recommend that your club has a strategic plan. Out of that strategic plan, you'll find that there's a business plan. Out of that strategic plan, you can't have a strategic plan for a club or any entity if you just do that with the club members or company members themselves. You have to invite stakeholders. And in our environment as Rotarians, those stakeholders are your public, your government, and your other non-governmental and even church-based organizations, your local government authorities, your community, your villages, and most of all, your householders, your actual people who live in the villages, and of course, our partners in service. So when you use the community assessment toolkit or any assessment toolkit that you would like, you then can assess your area, the population that you serve. And then you identify the key problems in that community. And then you dovetail your project so that they have high impact, so that long after we are all gone, they will say, hey, the Rotary Club of X or the Rotary Club of Y, they did so much that they actually cut down the number of amputations in their community by 10% in the first year, 20% in the third year, 50% after 5 years. They actually reduced the number of amputations by working with the community leaders, by working with the health authorities, by working with international agencies, by securing a district grant, by getting a global grant. They were able to purchase 4,000 HbA1c kits, and they are $60 US on Amazon for one. $60 US for one. And that kit, if you teach a householder with diabetes, the chances are their family and their children will get diabetes. And you can teach them to use that kit. You can actually cut down the chance of complications just by a $60 US kit on Amazon to test the HbA1c at home. Now, isn't that something? And that's what really the service projects presentation, some of the objectives of it so far. So let us go and summarize, and then we'll ask some questions, right? You can ask me or anyone else some questions. So are you ready for 2025, 2024, 25 secretaries-elect and presidents-elect? One of your heartthrob, one of the main things in your Rotary Club is your service projects. It is what keeps your club alive. It is what makes your club a club. It is what keeps your members there. It is what your club does every time you go to a meeting. They will say, okay, let's hear some of the projects that you have. When your governors come visit, you actually have to show your governors the projects, not the Rotarians, not their fancy clothes. It is the projects that you actually do in the community. And therefore, to be ready, you have to engage your service club's chair, as well as all the community members. And every Rotarian in that club, in my opinion, is actually a part of that service committee's, service club, service projects committee or team. What club goals are your committee responsible for? We just identify them. It is basically to assess your community, determine which are the most efficient and effective and high impact, high value projects going forward in this very complicated and very, very chaotic environment that we are in now. Determine the projects that have a greater impact by working with the key stakeholders, finding out, as the Rotarians who presented in the group said, find out the data from the regional health authorities or your health authorities, finding out the data from the local general practitioners, actually using other stakeholders like Red Cross and community and church-based leaders to actually get an assessment of what is happening on the ground. What types of projects are important to your club and do they reflect your vision and culture? Again, each club and the governors will notice when you go and you visit these clubs all over our district, we have such a beautiful and diverse district. Every club is unique. Every club, you can actually detect that little culture of that club. Recently, we went to Tobago for a meeting with our governor, and the meeting in Tobago, it was so different to that in Trinidad because they have a culture. They have we were so amazed that all the Rotaract, Interact, and Rotary Club members, they were like one together. You know, they were working together. And this happens all over our district. So that in your own club, when you go to your meeting, try one day to have a meeting, invite other governors who might be past governors to come in and understand your club. Find out about yourselves. In order to serve our communities going forward, you must find out about your club. Find out who you are. Find out, bring the people and go and look, take a drive on a Sunday and just drive around your community and look at your community and determine what they need most. Don't take it by hearsay. Actually go. And don't wait on them to write you a letter. Don't wait on them to actually have a problem on the newspaper and said, my house is burned down. Go to them before with other stakeholders. Find out those houses that are at risk of flooding and getting burned down. Find out the houses that have a single parent or differently abled or a blind person who has lost their eyes due to diabetes. These are the kind of projects that your Rotaract and Interact partners, they would want to help you with. You don't wait until people come to you. You need to go to them. How will you work with other committees in your club and district? I just told you. Just express your love for your community. That is a very important word. Bring them to your events and your socials. Invite them to your club meetings. Go to the village councils. Go to their local events. Show Rotary. Shine Rotary. Express the magic of Rotary. And you will see how well your communities will come to you. Sometimes they fear us. Sometimes they think we are bourgeoisie. And sometimes they think we are big shots, high price, people who are high and they don't involve themselves with local people. You need to get rid of that, especially going forward. So are you ready for 2024-25 presidents-elects and secretary-elects? Well, I think you are. Right. And that's finally, how do you engage persons? Now, today is an example of using a Zoom meeting, right, to engage people, right? In other words, then this is an example. You have to be innovative. You have to be, not that I am innovative, I am just using a tool. But because I have this experience where I teach at the University of Trinidad and Tobago, we use these tools to assess engagement. And this is an example today of how you yourself, as presidents-elect and secretaries-elect, you will have Zoom meetings. You will have to have Zoom meetings going forward. And then sometimes, I remember as president twice in my club, my biggest fear as a president was when I started the meeting at 7 and I used to go early. Every time I was president, I went early at 7, 10 minutes to 7. And at 7:15, I was anxious when I only see 3 Rotarians coming to the meeting. I used to be scared that I would not have a meeting. By 7:30, the rooms were filled. And that means that something was happening in the club. It was good. Something was going on. I mean, I underestimated myself. But what you have to understand is that if you engage people, right, and they come to your meetings, in the Zoom environment, they may actually log on and they don't come to your meetings. So it is harder to understand what you're doing. And sometimes you might get depressed if you have Zoom meetings and you see 40 people, but you're not getting anybody engaged, just about 5 people doing all the work. So engagement, yes, you have to have Zoom, but you have to find ways of engaging persons. I can't tell you on this chat, but maybe one of these days we can have a webinar in terms of sort of the tools of engagement so that presidents-elect and secretaries-elect, we can give you some of these tools, right, on how to engage persons. It's a skill. We have what is called engagement consultants or engagement facilitators, right? This is a whole course in university, how to engage people. How do you promote the project? Well, everyone knows, for example, that if you have Rotarians who don't want to come to your meetings and they don't want to come to your projects, the day that you put your project in the newspaper and you take pictures of all those who are there and you take nice pictures of what is happening, they will stay at home and they say, oh my God, that's my Rotary Club. Oh my God, I could have gone to that. So promotion of a project means that you get people involved by presenting by media, all types of media. But we want you in particular to use the Showcase database, log on your projects in the district so that we can access those projects and they can be actually teaching material, right, for younger Rotaracts and Interact persons who are coming and other Rotarians who are coming into our clubs. So, questions. If there are any questions, please, you could raise your hand and open it. I guess Maria could unmute you and then you can hear your questions. How are we doing for time?
Everybody's unmuted, so there's not
Yeah.
a worry about that, right?
How are we doing for time?
We're good for time.
Good.
No questions at the moment in the chat. Just a comment.
Yeah.
Education is important,
Yeah.
and diet needs to be taken into account, and that's in
That's
relation
in touch with the diabetes. Yeah.
to the project, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Education is very important.
PDG, I think that your presentation checked all the boxes. It
No
answered
question.
everyone's questions because there are no questions. But so important, that exercise in taking a project from start to finish. Just shows the tools that are needed and how do we do effective projects, and we don't just pull them out of the air. There's a whole process to it, and it's a group effort.
Yeah.
So
A number of clubs are now incorporated, or they are limited liability companies. And I know this is happening in Trinidad, but quite a number of clubs, because of some laws that legislation that has been passed in the last few years with respect to community-based organizations. And therefore, I know that in other jurisdictions that there are similar legislation, and clubs are becoming more like companies as well. Rotary International, over the last 10 to 15 years, has transitioned into projecting and promoting a sort of corporate type programming. And you can look at the strategic plan and you can see that they're trying to say, well, look, we want you to almost become a corporate entity, but still retain Rotary International's flexibility and agility, right? And therefore, that has been a hard task in terms of clubs as well as districts, leadership, where you're trying to say, well, look, we want you to have better accounting, we want you to have better finance, better economics, more accountability and transparency, better reporting, proper budgets have to be presented for projects. The end report and the presentations by the project services chair has to be actually come back to the board, for example. They have to be ratified. So there's a process, and that's very important. And a number of Rotarians are persons who are business. They are self-made business people. They are corporate CEOs, and they do that in their work. And then you come and you tell them in a Rotary Club, well, you know, you have to do the accounting and you have to make sure and present your budget to the board, and you have to put in the metrics or indicators to measure the effectiveness of your project. And, you know, we have been giving out wheelchairs in our club for 25 years. That is very important. But then the amputation rate is increasing. So is it that we are doing anything? Is it that we are actually achieving anything? And to do that, we have to measure the performance of the club in the areas that we serve. And that is a sort of business process. So I think that has been a challenge going forward. And I think that since some of the clubs are limited liability companies per se, which there are some benefits, very good benefits in terms of risks and liabilities, in terms of legal action, you know, it protects the members, so to speak, by becoming corporate entities, in a sense, limited liability companies, for example, so that those are things that we can look at. But it also puts a little pressure on the clubs to now have their accounts audited. They have to have more financial, you know, prudent financial management, etc. So these are things I'm sure that the leaders, as we go forward in terms of meeting with our presidents-elects and secretaries-elect, that we can now, you know, encourage some of these discussions in terms of service projects and how we conduct those projects going forward. So that's my ending statement in the fact that there were no questions.
There actually are some questions now, so stick a pin.
Time permits, you know, go ahead.
You're chatting cause some questions. Kai, I noticed her hand was up, but I think your question was answered. Are you good? Do you need any more?
No, I'm good, thank you.
All right. And Vin, I see that the response to your question was also there. And PDG, those were questions around needs assessment and what are the tools, where could they find them? But they were provided in the chat.
Right.
Some ideas to increase membership engagement was one of the questions that came from Carmelane. And kindly share at least one tip on engagement. So you talked about those engagement tools as being another session, but I think we need a sneak peek there.
A sneak preview. Well, one of the things that that I learned when we were doing our physical workshops, for example, when we had consultants who came in that we hired through the European Union and the United Nations donor organizations, is that we would have physical workshops, and we talked about chocolate and all of these sweets and whatever, you know. One of the things that we learned in Rotary, and I'm sure all the governors who are here would attest to this, is that the first thing that struck me when I went for my governor training is that they would ask us to tell a story. We would want you to tell a story. And we always found that the persons who told their stories or told a story would actually attract the attention of the persons listening. Because I remember when I was a young Rotarian, I remember I had just joined with my wife. My wife is not a Rotarian, but when we joined Rotary in my club, we had to go and stand in front with my spouse because it was almost as we were joining together. And because of that, my wife felt that she was part of the club, and she supported me most of the times throughout. But I remember the story. I remember we went to a little village and we gave out Christmas treats. The village was called Palmyra Village. And there was this young little child. I think she was so tiny, and she was dressed in a frilly skirt. I tell you, it was like silk dress, like she had it from a party, that she went to, and it was moth-eaten, and it was tattered with little holes, and she was barefooted. And my wife and I gave a little gift, a Christmas toy to this girl, and we saw her, the pupils, man, the little eyes dilated. It was so beautiful. It just became so big. She was so happy in that moment. About 4 weeks after, I was at the emergency department at the San Fernando General Hospital around 2 a.m. and they brought in 2 children and a father who were found dead at their home. The father drank a poison, and he laced the food of the children with the same poison. Do you know that one of the children who I saw on the cot was that little girl? That little girl whom we gave that little toy to, and we saw her pupils dilated. And it just drove me to stay in Rotary forever, because that little story is that in that little moment, my wife and I gave that little child a little gift while she was alive, and 2 weeks after, she was dead. Now, that is an example of a story. So that is just one little tool that we will teach to you, hopefully in the sessions later on how to engage people. You have to learn to tell your stories. And if you tell your stories, trust me, you will get engagement. So that's just an example.
Thank you, PDG. There's another question here, and it's from Oscar. Question in Suriname, we have more than 50% obesity. Who can I connect with to do a district awareness project? And maybe we can purchase these kits in bulk to get them cheaper for all clubs in the region. I'm going to take that question, PDG. I think, Oscar, we have the Childhood Obesity Prevention Program, and I think that's the program, and that's the project. That's where you need to go to start the awareness. And I know that you know about COP. So while we focus on childhood obesity. It relates to all obesity, right? So that would be that. And some comments. I think it's important to have a management system that meets international best practices, but there must be a distinction between a service organization and corporate. That's from someone on a Samsung phone. And that's it. So
Definitely.
a lot of the comments are around assessment and assessment tools, and how do we assess, and where do we go to find them. But folks, I'm going to tell you that the Learning Center is a serious place for information. Peter. So it's a wealth of information that you cannot you can't go wrong. Use the Learning Center. I encourage you to go there. And if this is your first time hearing about the Learning Center, go on. That's where you learn all the stuff that you need to know. And as you take up your roles, I encourage you to go on and you do the course that is assigned to your role. And then you can do some others. But there are lots of things to do. Sorry, Stephanie has a question. Is there any documented guidelines on planning, implementing, and evaluating Rotary projects available at the Learning Center?
The answer to that is not specifically, right? Because I myself went to look at some of them, but they have been over the past few, years, they have had, guidelines, and right, and how to assess it, because most of these are done by clubs anyway. Clubs do their budgets, right? They present their budgets to the governors. They audit the financial statements. So it's just a basic financial procedures that all clubs will do. So it's nothing different. And planning, a lot of us would have done project planning. There's a lot of persons who are in your club. They do the Gantt charts, for example, and the Gantt charts is a summary of your project planning. Certain clubs have strategic plans, and out of strategic plans, you will have a business plan. The business plan engages stakeholders. It will tell you, like, how are you going to achieve your program. So whether you know it, whether you feel there is no planning or not, there is planning. So we don't want to make you feel that there's a non-existence of planning. As a matter of fact, all projects that we as governors, when we visit the clubs, they have excellent planning. They may not write it down A, B, C, D, E. And I think that is what one of the comments made about the corporate world and the Rotary world is that you will find that these projects are highly efficient, very effective. But in order to get grants, for example, there is a specific set of guidelines that must be achieved, for example. So all those little things, you can get them on the grants applications process. And this is where you will find how that you will have to plan your projects, how you have to identify it's almost like an accounting sheet. It's really thorough. And you have to put every little things, your income, your expenditure, what are your profits, what is the expected surplus, how it's going to be distributed, etc. So that when you apply for grants, you would have to do those things. So the answer to that is, although not specific, and there is no specific guidelines, it does exist through either the grants application or it has been going on in your clubs, I am positive, for many years. It's just a matter of, trying to sort of pull a past project that you would have done or getting one of the resources in your club, either a past AG or a past leader or a person who is an accountant or a project planner, and they exist.
Thank you, PDG Stephen. So another session this evening that was full of information. This was an interactive session, so we got to hear from a lot of you and to see how engaged you are on service projects. DGE, do you have anything to say before we close? She's trying to unmute.
Sorry about that, Sonia. My internet has been up and down. But no, just in closing to say, I think this was this was a really, really good session. I loved the interaction, the practicality in terms of how the session was run. But more than that, the attendance was really good too, and I appreciate that. So thank you very much to our presenter, to all the participants, and please, let's meet in St. Vincent. I want to see you all face to face. The virtual sessions were good, but we need to have that interaction as well. And just if you haven't registered, there's a 10% discount with Caribbean Airlines right now in terms of airfares. I saw that on the emails today. So thank you very much again, everyone.
Thanks, guys, and look forward to a successful 2024-2025 with you. We will be having other sessions as the training team ramps up to the beginning of the Rotary year, but I urge you to go onto the Learning Center, take some courses, go back onto the website, go over these videos of the sessions that we've had, because they have all been excellent. Lots and lots of information to learn. And, you know, the district is as strong as our weakest link. Please let us get ourselves organized into being a very productive Rotary district, even more productive than we are, because as I say, District 7030 is one of the leading districts, you know. So thanks very much for joining us. Tonight was an awesome session, and we look forward to seeing you in St. Vincent, if not before. Thank you. Bye-bye.